guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Now, before we get started with today's video, I wanted to apologise for not posting recently, but there's just been a lot going on. Also, it's hard to find the time of the night to film, because there's just always background noise, and right now there is going to be background noise. I'm sorry if you can hear that, but there's just nothing I can do about it. If I wait around forever to film, I never will, because I can't help what everyone else in the house is doing in the background noise. But without further ado, let's get straight into today's case. But before we do, please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and also hit that bell notification to get updated when I do post videos. Sorry guys, there's just going to be background noise, it is what it is. Also, before we get started in today's case, it is a bit of a sensitive topic, so it does include basically racism, so just prepare yourself for that. Now let's just get straight into today's case. So today's case is about somebody called James Byrd Jr. James was born on the 2nd of May 1949. He was an African American who was murdered by 3 white supremacists in Jasper, Texas on the 7th of June 1998. Sean Berry, Lawrence Brewer and John King dragged him for 3 miles, which is 5 kilometers, behind a pickup truck along an asphalt road. James, who remained conscious for much of his ordeal, was killed about halfway through the dragging when his body hit the edge of a culvert, severing his right arm and head. The murderers drove on for another 1.5 miles, which is 2.5 kilometers, before dumping his torso in front of a black church. Brewer and King were the first white men to be sentenced to death for killing a black person in the history of modern Texas. James's lynching by dragging gave impetus to passage of a Texan hate crimes law, which later led to passage by Congress of the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, commonly known as the Matthew Shepard Act, in 2009. Now, Matthew Shepard is somebody whose case I would like to cover as well in the future, by the way, so I won't tell you too much about him now. I mean, you guys have probably heard of him already, because his case was also big, especially in America, but for now I'll just hold back on information about him until I cover his case. So anyway, Brewer was executed by lethal injection for his part in the murder on the 21st of September 2011. King was executed by lethal injection at the state penitentiary in Huntsville, Texas on 24th of April 2019. Berry was sentenced to life imprisonment and will be eligible for parole in 2038. So here's a little bit more information about James. He was the third of 9 children to stay After graduating from high school, he married and had 3 children, Renee, Ross and Jamie. He worked as a vacuum salesman. Ross Byrd, the only son of James Byrd Jr., has been involved with murder victims' families of reconciliation, an organisation that opposes capital punishment. He campaigned to spare the lives of those who murdered his father and appeared briefly in the documentary Deadline. So now I will go on to talk about what actually happened on the day of this crime. So, on the 7th of June 1998, James, who was 49 at the time, accepted a ride from Sean Berry, who was 23, Lawrence Brewer, who was 31, and John King, who was 23. Berry, who was driving, was acquainted with James from around town. Instead of taking James home, the 3 men took him to a remote country road out of town, beat him severely, spray painted his face, urinated and defecated on him, and chained him by his ankles to their pick-up truck before dragging him for about 3 miles, which is 5 kilometres. Brewer later claimed that James's throat had been slashed by Berry before he was dragged. However, forensic evidence suggested he had been attempted to keep his head up while being dragged, and an autopsy suggested that Byrd was alive during much of the dragging. Byrd died about halfway along the route of his dragging when his right arm and head were severed as his body hit a culvert. While almost all Byrd's ribs were fractured, his brain and skull were found intact, further suggesting that he had maintained consciousness while he was being dragged. Berry, Brewer and King dumped the mutilated remains of James's body in front of an African American church on Half Creek Road, then drove off to a barbecue. A motorist found his decapitated remains the following morning. Along the area where Byrd was dragged, police found a wrench which Berry written on. They also found a lighter that was inscribed with Bossa, which was King's prison nickname. The police found 81 places that included portions of Byrd's remains. Since Brewer and King were well-known white supremacists, it was determined by state law enforcement officials that this murder was a hate crime. They called up on the Federal Bureau of Investigation less than 24 hours after the discovery of Byrd's remains. The special agents in charge of the FBI's Houston office said that they were assisting because of the case's extreme circumstances. King had several racist tattoos, a black man hanging from a tree, Nazi symbols, and the badge for a gang of white supremacist inmates known as Confederate Knights of America. In a jailhouse letter to Brewer that was interrogated by jail officials, King expressed pride in the crime and said that he realised while committing the murder was executed on April 24th, 2019. Sean Allen Berry claimed that Brewer and King were almost entirely responsible for the crime. Brewer, however, testified that Berry had cut Byrd's throat before he was tied to the truck. The jury decided that little evidence supported this claim. As a result, Berry was spared the death penalty and was sentenced to life in prison. As of 2020, Berry was living in protective custody at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, his Ramsey unit, and will be first eligible for parole when he is 63 years old in June 2038. He spends 23 hours per day in an 8 by 6 foot, 2.4 by 1.8 meter cell, with 1 hour for exercise. Berry married Christy Marcantel by proxy. Lawrence Russell Brewer was a white supremacist who, prior to Byrd's murder, had served a prison sentence for drug possession and burglary. He was paroled in 1991. After violating his parole conditions in 1994, Brewer was returned to prison. According to his court testimony, he joined a white supremacist prison gang with King in order to safeguard himself from other inmates. Brewer and King became friends in the Beto Unit prison. A psychiatrist testified that Brewer did not appear repentant for his crimes. Brewer was ultimately convicted and sentenced to death. Brewer was on death row at Polonsky Unit, but he was executed in the Huntsville Unit on September 21st, 2011. The day before his execution, Brewer expressed no remorse for his crime. As far as any regrets, no, I have no regrets. No, I'd do it all over again, to tell you the truth. Before his execution, Brewer ordered a last meal that prompted the end of last meal requests in Texas. The meal included 2 chicken fried steaks with gravy and sliced onions, a triple patty bacon cheeseburger, a cheese omelette with ground beef, tomatoes, onions, bell peppers and jalapenos, a bowl of fried okra with ketchup, 1 pound of barbecue meat with half a loaf of white bread, 3 fully loaded fajitas, a meat lover's pizza, 1 pint of Bluebell vanilla ice cream, a slab of peanut butter fudge with crushed peanuts on top, and 3 root beers. When the meal was presented, he told officials that he was not hungry, and as a result he did not eat any of it. The meal was discarded, prompting State Senator John Whitmer to ask Texas prison officials to end the 87-year-old tradition of giving classed meals to condemned inmates. The prison agency's executive director responded by stating that the practice had been terminated effective immediately. John William, which is best known as Bill or King, was Berry's long-term friend. He was accused of beating James with a bat and then dragging him behind a pickup truck until he died. King, who prior to the murder had recently been released from a Texas prison, said that he had been repeatedly gang raped in prison by black inmates. He was found guilty and sentenced to death for his role in James's kidnapping as aspects of the Byrd murder echo lynching traditions that were common in the post-Civil War South. These include mutilation of decapitation and rifling, such as barbecue or a picnic either during or after a lynching. Byrd's murder was strongly condemned by Jesse Jackson and the Martin Luther King Center as an act of vicious racism, and it also focused national attention on the prevalence of white supremacist prison gangs. Three sisters of James Byrd are Jehovah's Witnesses and in a joint statement said, "Having a loved one tortured and lynched produced an unimaginable sense of loss and pain. How does one respond to such a brutal act? Retaliation, hateful speech, or promotion of hate-ridden propaganda never entered our mind. We thought, what would Jesus have done? How would he have responded? The answer was crystal clear. His message would have been one of peace and hope." The victim's family created the James Byrd Foundation for racial healing after his death. Basketball star Dennis Rodman paid their funeral expenses and gave Byrd's family $25,000. Fight promoter Don King gave Byrd's children $100,000 to be put towards their educational expenses. On October 7, 1998, an episode of Law and Order titled DWB, which is Driving While Black, referenced the murder with the plot. Instead of three white supremacists, however, the killers were three white New York police officers. As the plot goes, the officers stop and arrest a black man for no reason, and then proceed to drag him to his death after tying him to the car. In 1999, the documentary Journey to a Hate-Free Millennium was created, showcasing three of the US hate crimes, including the shootings of Columbian High School, the death of a gay student Matthew Shepard, and the execution of James Byrd Jr. The documentary won over 100 film and educational awards and has been used in schools all over the world as a means to stop hate. Some advocacy groups such as the NAACP National Voter Fund made an issue of this case during George W. Bush's presidential campaign in 2000. They accused Bush of implicit racism since, as governor of Texas, he opposed hate crime legislation. Also, citing a prior commitment, Bush did not appear at Byrd's funeral. Because two of the three murderers were sentenced to death and the third murderer was sentenced to life in prison. All three of them were charged with and convicted of capital murder, the highest felony level in Texas. The 77th Texas legislature passed as the James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Act, with the signature of Governor Rick Perry, who inherited the balance of Bush's expired term. So that brings us to the end of today's case. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it's been just because I've been just so